Okay, class, today we're going to talk about genetic variation and mutation. Genetic variation is important so that we have several alleles to pick from so that we can breed animals in a desirable direction. Genetic mutation is the random change of alleles in a population, and mutation is important because it's the reason we have genetic variation. One genetic mutation that occurs a lot in cats is polydactyly. Polydactyly is when cats have multiple toes on each of their feet. It usually occurs in the front feet before it occurs in the back feet, and it's more common in breeds such as the Maine Coon as well as the Pixie Bob. Does anybody else have genetic variation or mutation examples they'd like to share with us today? Okay.
The Merle gene is a heterozygote of an incomplete dominant gene. If you mate two dogs, about 1/4 of their puppies will be double Merles, which is a common term for dogs homozygous for the Merle. A high percentage of these double Merle puppies could have eye defects and or be deaf. Breeders who want Merle puppies should mate a Merle with a non-Merle dog, then approximately half the puppies will be Merles without running the risk of vision or hearing defects that come with the double Merles. A phantom Merle or cryptid Merle is when a dog has such small patches of Merle, or none at all, that it appears to be a non-Merle. This is common in dogs that are recessive red through patches, though patches can still be seen in certain red dogs. A dog with phantom Merle coloring is described as cryptic for Merle.
Very good. Any other examples? Okay, go ahead.
I know of the ovine hereditary chondrodysplasia. It's also known as spider syndrome. It's a genetic disorder in sheep, and it causes skeletal deformities in these animals. The defects are like long and bent legs, twisted spines, flattened rib cages, long necks, and they're underdeveloped. They appear normal at birth, but often show their symptoms between 2 and 6 weeks of age. It's inherited from a single recessive allele. It's a mutation within the gene FGFR3, which is fibroblast growth factor receptor 3. Because this is a homozygous recessive genetic disorder, the lamb will only be affected if both parents are carriers and pass on this mutation.
Very good. Anybody else? Okay, Dennis?
Okay, I'll talk about hyperkalemic periodic paralysis. It is a genetic disease that's in the AQHA. It is linked to a specific stallion named Impressive. HYPP is a muscular disease that affects both horses and humans. It is a hereditary genetic defect that disrupts a protein called sodium ion channel, a tiny gateway in the membrane of the muscle cells. The effects of HYPP are unpredictable paralysis attacks on horses that can be very severe and even cause death. HYPP is limited, like I said, to a limited bloodline of horses that came from Impressive. Only horses from him can carry this disease, and it can be tested for. DNA testing can be done to find out if your horse has got this disease, and it will be put on all of their registration certificates, whether they're negative or positive, for breeding purposes. There is no cure for it. Horses do not outgrow this disease at all. Recommended treatments for this is feed. Feed your horses a lot of grain instead of more alfalfa. Exercise the horses regularly. Make sure they have a place to exercise. They're not just standing in one spot all day. Be very careful if a horse is having an episode that you don't ride it, or it could fall and hurt you. So.
Very good.
Thanks.
Very good. Anybody else? Go ahead.
The myostatin gene is a naturally occurring phenomenon and is pretty well known. Myostatin-related muscular hypertrophy, or more commonly known as double muscling, can be seen in many species, including dogs and even humans, and is created by naturally occurring change in muscular growth. It's clearly present in cattle, and some producers have actively bred for it to maximize its positive effects on their stock. Melissa, do you know any benefits of myostatin?
Why, Hannah, I sure do. The benefits of myostatin can include increased carcass yield, but there are other interesting aspects of myostatin that are less well known. Recent research conducted in Spain and Australia has concluded that myostatin is also associated with lower levels of carcass fat, lower levels of saturated fat, increased meat yields, enhanced meat tenderness, and even enhanced feed efficiency. In some but not all cases, myostatin can also be linked to increased birth weights.
Very good. Is there anybody else that wants to share a mutation? Okay, go ahead.
The one I've chosen is dwarfism. Dwarfism occurs almost in all mammals and has numerous genetic causes. In the early 1940s and 50s, the Angus and Hereford breeds were hit by dwarfism pretty hard. The secretary of the American Hereford Association sent out their field staff in 1949 and told them to gather all the information they could on these, they called them freak or midget calves. These calves had been observed for many years, and they couldn't tell if it was a genetic thing or if it was from the feed or the environment. In 1950s, in early 1950, they decided that it was a genetic thing. A lot of these investigators took the pedigrees to Dr. J. Lush. Dr. J. Lush, who was recognized as the leading animal geneticist in the world, he studied these pedigrees and decided it wasn't Prince Domino like they thought it was, and it came from a bull named St. Louis Lad who was born in 1899. Now remember that this started happening in the 1940s and 50s, so this bull came 40, 50 years before. I thought that was kind of neat that and the reason they come up with why it come 50 years later was because the bull and his lines were in a big Hereford ranch that they strictly avoided inbreeding, so the recessive gene never was able to match up with its other genes. So 50 years later, they started having trouble with it.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else want to offer a genetic
Me,
mutation?
me, pick me.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, Professor. Okay, so I'm doing albinoism. I didn't even have to write it. Not bad, huh? Anyway, albinoism is mutation where the pigments in your skin don't even produce enough color anymore, so there's no color in your skin. Highly susceptible to sunburns. Plus, that's where the pink eyes come from because there's no color being produced. There are other different types of mutations of albinoism, one of them being leucistic, which actually happens a lot in, you'll see the peacocks or you'll see the lions, they tend to have white feathers. Now, other things that tend to happen are, with that mutation is the fact that, well, anything that can be warmed tends to not turn color. But when the teacher's stripping her jacket in front of us, I get very distracted. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so this is what I like about videos, you can edit it. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. So, no, because what happens is that whatever gets warmed, the color doesn't even need to flow there. The color tends to go to the eyes, the face, or the paws. Lions are actually the most common thing these days is because they're a huge profit for any kind of zoo. As you see the lion drawing here, they're very good at becoming white.
Thank you. Okay, class, that's all for today. You're excused. See you next time.
Woo!